They are not unusual, actually quite the opposite. They are as normal as the change of seasons themselves and normally accompany them. They are land or rock or mudslides, and they are very regular in the Pacific Northwest. Hi, I'm Chris May, host of This Day in Weather History, a podcast from the Weather Network in Canada. Afterward, investigators determined that definitely a heavy rainfall in the weeks prior to March 22nd helped trigger the slide. But it did not act alone this day in weather history. On the March 4th episode of this podcast, and that episode was called When Rogers Pass Resembled Pompeii, go look for it, I told a story of a mountainous region in northeastern BC through the Columbia Range that was already prone to mudslides and actually was the reason it took so long and so many lives trying to get the Canadian National Rail line all the way across Canada from the east. And if you missed it, please go back and check that one out wherever you happen to be listening to me right now. The Pompeii part of the title is there for a good reason. Sadly, a grim reason, but go check it out. Right now, let's fast forward to March 22nd of 2014, this day in weather history, when a portion of a hill in Washington state suddenly collapsed, burying a whole neighborhood within a small community. Also, Washington is about 55 miles or 88.5 kilometers northeast of Seattle. Normally out of the spotlight, it was headline news for one of the deadliest mudslides in U.S. history. The collapse happened mid-morning, but there is no way no one did not know to expect this. Prior to this tragic day, there had been weeks of heavy rain. However, what no one could have predicted was that a massive, fast-moving wall of mud and debris would suddenly come crashing down the hillside like a runaway freight train, rolling over and destroying 49 homes and at the same time claiming the lives of 43 souls. The force of the mud rush is not exaggerated either. Those on site for the recovery remembered seeing cars that were not washed away. Rather, they were crushed to the size of a refrigerator or smaller. A lot like what you'd see at a car scrapyard. You know, those big machines come in and they compact them down. They were compacted under what proved to be up to 80 feet of mud. There were cases where they couldn't even tell what was a car and what was some other debris. It was that intense. Remember that This Day in Weather History can be enjoyed a number of ways. Right now, you're listening to the full version of today's story on your favorite podcast provider. I hope you've subscribed. But there is also the daily podcast video short. They're shot right here in my recording studio, so you get that perspective. And oftentimes, they include visuals from the day's event from when it happened in weather history. So after listening to the full story here, go check out the video there. It's the podcast video short on television or online anytime at theweathernetwork.com/weather history. Okay, just like the March 4th story from Rogers Pass, British Columbia, the Oso area has also long been prone to mudslides, some dating back thousands of years. So, it was not a stretch for me to comment earlier that they had to know this was possible after that much relentless rain. They had millennia of case studies. So mudslides, also known as mud flows, are a common type of landslide that are triggered by freeze-thaw cycles and rain where the earth suffers fissures and breaks away. It's natural and normal. Still, each year in the United States, more than 25 people on average die due to landslides, while thousands more are killed elsewhere around the world. Some of those notables include 1969. Hurricane Camille created a flash flood and mudslide that killed an estimated 150 people in Virginia. And then there was 1985, when a landslide that was set off by heavy rain in Puerto Rico killed 130 people. And then it was landslides and flash floods that was caused by monsoon rains in 2013 in India that took the lives of close to 5,700 people. But what happened in Oso was a tragedy that claimed the lives of a whole community and took away whole families at once. This day in weather history. Hey, do you like the podcast? Tell you why. We'd love to hear from you. Go right now to wherever you're listening to me here and rate us, if you would, please. It's on a 5-star system, and we love as many stars as you can afford. I love going on and checking out the number of people who have had us between 4.5 and 5, as an example. Rate us, but then also review us. This way we can always stay on top of how you would like to see the show evolve. It's been on the air since June 1st. We have a lot of growing to do, and we'd love you to be a part of it. And then remember to subscribe to the podcast. Click the subscribe or follow button right there on the same podcast homepage. You'll be immediately reminded that the next day is ready to listen to, and you also have access to every episode in the archives. And like I said, going back to June 1st of 2020, you got a lot to get caught up on if you just found out about us. Tomorrow is March 23rd, and I will be telling you a $4 billion story. I know, right? There was a 2-part flooding event in California where 100 weather observation stations recorded their greatest one-day rainfalls in their respective stations' history. It was bigger than I can get into here, so I suggest you be here tomorrow for what happened and why on this day in weather history with me, your host, Chris May.